Hi, hello. Today we're doing a super exciting video and I'm probably going to film this in a couple different parts because I have breakfast in the oven. But I was really excited to film this, so I wanted to start. So I'm gonna dip out after the alarm goes off and I'll come back. What are we filming today? We are filming my classics collection. I love watching people's classics collections because classic books are something I only started really getting interested in the last year and a half, 2 years. I never really saw myself as a classics reader. I was just like, oh, you know, classics. They make pretty editions, but that's it. Yeah, I'd always had to read them for like school, but never for my own pleasure. But then last couple years, I've actually like picked them up for pleasure, and I'm like, wait, I've been missing out on a whole like category of books because I was too cool for them. So I have quite a few classics now. I have more than I thought I had because when I was like pulling them off my shelf, I was like, I won't have this many. I don't keep them all in the same section on my shelf. But I have 4 piles here. You can kind of see one of them, and they're divided. So I'm going to divide the video up a little bit. We're going to do classics, we're going to do modern classics, and then we're going to do sci-fi and fantasy classics. So I'm really excited. Also, I'm realizing I didn't introduce myself. My name is Sam. Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm very happy to see you, and yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. So let's just go into it. Also, like this video, it's gonna be really rambly, I'm sure. I'm not gonna talk about necessarily what the books are about. A lot of these are classics. All of these are classics, but a lot of these classics you probably already know about. So I'm not gonna really be talking about them. I might talk about like why I bought it, where I bought it, how pretty I think the book is, if I've read it, but I mean, I'm probably not gonna talk about what the actual content is. So, alright, let's just start. First off, we have Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is the illustrated edition. The illustration are watercolors done by Luisa Rivera, and it is translated from Spanish by Edith Grossman. I haven't read this book. This was one of Barnes & Noble's like rediscovered classics that we're doing, and I was like, oh, I'll pick it up. I do want to read a Gabriel Garcia Marquez book really badly, and Love in the Time of Cholera or 100 Years of Solitude are his 2 most famous ones, so I was like, okay, may as well pick this one up. It's one of our like rediscovered classics, and I can talk about it with customers. And this book is really pretty. Like, just, I love the art. The art is stunning. I know nothing about this book. I did have someone tell me to look at the trigger warnings before I read it, so I am going to do that, but I'm okay not knowing necessarily what this book is about. Okay, I just came back from having breakfast. Okay, back to the books. So next up we have one of my favorite authors, but it's a book I actually haven't read, and that is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I love Hemingway, like, as a historical figure. I think he is so fun to learn about. And I haven't watched the Hemingway documentary series yet, but it's sitting on my like Xfinity box waiting for me, and I can't wait to watch it. But I haven't read For Whom the Bell Tolls. I read mostly his short stories, but I don't actually own any copies, which is interesting enough. I picked this up years ago. I really like this edition. It's a, I don't know, just a Scribner paperback. I don't think there's anything special about it. I just like these editions. Also, I've visited his childhood home, which is in, is it in Oak Park, I think? It was cool to go there. I'm a big Hemingway fan. Alright, next we have a very tiny collection, and those are my Virginia Woolf books. I have Mrs. Dalloway and The Room, or A Room of One's Own. I've read about half of A Room of One's Own, but I put it down, and I've read Mrs. Dalloway a couple times, and I love Mrs. Dalloway so very much. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I really like these editions. They don't make them anymore, so if you know how to get like these editions, let me know, because I want them in these editions. Probably not happening. If I ever see them used though, I will try to pick them up because I just think they're really pretty. But yeah, Mrs. Dalloway, one of my favorite books. Definitely a book that I should have looked at the trigger warnings ahead of time because it ended up being horribly triggered the first time I read it. But every time I've read it subsequently, I've gotten so much more out of it. Yeah, and honestly, reading more of her stuff is a priority for me. Too many books, not enough time kind of situation. Then we have a John Steinbeck. This is Travels with Charlie. I love this edition. It is so cute. Some of his novellas are printed in this like edition, this like cute little pocket size with this cute art. I've never read any, no, that's not true. I've read Of Mice and Men, which I don't own a copy of that either, but I liked Of Mice and Men a lot. But I never felt called to read more Steinbeck. One of my close friends is a big Steinbeck fan, and she's like, "Damn, read a Steinbeck." And I was like, okay. So I picked up Travels with Charlie, which is a travelogue. I know I said I wasn't going to talk a lot about what these books are about, but I want to talk about this a little bit. Basically, he goes on a road trip with his dog, Charlie, and I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. So it's nonfiction. I don't think I'm going to get another Steinbeck until I read this one. Because I don't like feel called to any of them in particular. But yes, this feels like it would be a fun book to read on a train ride because it's a travel book. Next we have so I do kind of like have these grouped in like collections. Some of them are more prominent than others. This is my like Barnes & Noble signature collection books outside of my Jane Austen Barnes & Noble signature classic books. The signatures are like the new Barnes & Noble line of classics. I really like them. Even if I didn't work there, I'd probably be like trying to get my hands on them because I really like them. I think they're very nice. So first we have a copy of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I love The Great Gatsby. I've read it several times. I adore it so much. It's one of my favorite books. I'm also a big fan of Fitzgerald. I love his writing. I know he's very hit or miss for a lot of people, but I think his like sparse kind of just like, I hate calling it sparse, but it's kind of thin writing with like little daggers of detail, if that makes sense. I really like it. I really love his writing. I love it so much. Gatsby's a great book. But I know a lot of people don't like it. Then I have The Picture of Dorian Gray by, of course, Oscar Wilde. I've never read this one. It's super high on my TBR. One thing about the signature classics, I like them a lot. But I don't like them so much that I feel like precious about like annotating or like highlighting in them. So I will probably actually be actively highlighting in this and annotating in it when I read it. And that's the plan. That's the plan. And then I have Alice's Adventure in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Is this not just such a pretty cover? I love this cover so much. Like, it's just so pretty. It also has art. I've read both of these so long ago. I would have been in like middle school. I had this app on my iPod Touch that was like classic books for free, and I read both the Alice books and Flatland, which is not a good book, but that's what I read on that app. And then I was like, oh, this is not for me. Like, the Alice books were fine. They just didn't like interest me so much as a kid, which is interesting because I think a lot of children are drawn to it. I would like to return to it as an adult and see if I like it. Then we have my NYRB collection minus my Sylvia Townsend Warner NYRBs. NYRBs are something I like just found out existed like when I started working at Barnes & Noble in 2019. They're really cool. Basically the New York, it is NYRB, right? Yeah. The New York Review books, I think is what it stands for. They print a lot of like novels that have gone into public domain but aren't necessarily big classics but are still like classics books. I think they're just in America. Like, you could obviously order them on Book Depository. The kind of like correlation to them in like the UK and the rest of the world is like Penguin Modern Classics and Penguin Vintage Classics. There's some overlap there. But yeah, otherwise NYRB is pretty unique in like the books they publish. So I have Beware of Pity by Stefan Zweig, I think, and he's an Austrian writer. Haven't read this. I want to, obviously. I really want to. I really like NYRBs. I just haven't picked up nearly as many as I want to. Abigail by Magda Szabo. She is a Hungarian writer, and one of my coworkers, my friend, who is the same one who recommends Steinbeck all the time, just finished this, and she's like, you have to read it right away. And I'm like, I will as soon as I can. It's basically Mean Girls in World War II Hungary. is how she described it and how it was described to her. She says it's spot on. I do really want to read Abigail. Oh, I'm so excited for this one. I'm gonna read it this summer. It's called The Summer Book, and it's by Tove Jansson, who's the same person who wrote the Moomin books and comics, and I love her just as a person. I can't wait. I want to read all her stuff. Oh, I didn't even notice there was art in it. Wait, there's art. The summer book. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Now we have my Jane Austen collection for the most part. So we've got 4 of the Barnes & Noble signature classics, and that is Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, which I am actually currently rereading and annotating in. And the last chapters I read were like, I had so much to just like highlight. Like, look at that. Look at that. Persuasion. There's a little bit of glare. And Emma, which I think Emma's going to be the next Austen that I read. I do have Mansfield Park and Northanger Abbey pre-ordered in the signature editions. They come out later this springtime, so I'm really excited for those to come. And then I have a Penguin Classics edition of Pride and Prejudice, which is like, I haven't read this edition. I like this edition a lot, but I couldn't get like an undamaged copy, which like annoyed me to no end. Every time I ordered one, it came damaged. And then we've got my Sylvia Townsend Warner collection. I've actually read a couple of these and I love them, and I want to read all her books. I want to read all her books so bad. So we have Lolly Willows. This is her first novel and is amazing. And if you're looking for an alternative to Virginia Woolf, Sylvia Townsend Warner is a great alternative, both historically as a role in the historical aspects of literature and queerness as well. And also like content. Lolly Willows is a great book. It's basically about a woman who, she is much old, or she's getting old. She's like a spinster type person, and she's like, no, I don't want to get married, so she moves to the countryside and like becomes a witch. And like, it's so good. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. And then we have Mr. Fortune, which actually has like the novel Mr. Fortune's Maggot and the like novella, but I don't think the novella is ever complete, and that's The Salutation. I haven't read this one yet. Of all her books, this is the one that I own that I'm least interested in reading next, but I do still want to read it. And The Corner That Held Them, which is the first one I ever read by her, it is also really good. I think Lolly Willows is more of my taste, but The Corner That Held Them is a better book. It's about just the lives of nuns in medieval England, and it's so funny. Okay, it is so funny. This is also my first NYRB book, which is also exciting. It's really good. It's really good. And then we have the 2 Elfin collections. So Kingdoms of Elfin and Of Cats and Elfins. So these are short story collections, mostly set in this like world of Elfin, which is sort of a magical fae type world, but Of Cats and Elfin also has some other short story collections. And I didn't know this until I actually got them, but Neil Gaiman is tapped on the cover as just like loving them. So I was like, oh, okay. These are published by Handheld Press, who I've never heard of outside of these books. They have other stuff, but I don't know what. I don't know what. We're coming down to the end of this first pile, so that's kind of nice. And to like help with cleanup, I'm actually gonna like put the video on pause and like put this pile away on the shelves before moving on to the next pile. But my last 3 in this pile, and we're still in like the classics section after this, because I have more classics. But these are like classical. I actually studied Latin for 2 years, and I took a lot of classical courses just for funsies. It did nothing for my degree, but I really enjoy learning about that kind of thing. And you know, it's something that I've really let drop off since graduating, just because I haven't had the structure to pick things up, but I really do want to pick things up again. So I have Virgil's The Georgics, A Poem of the Land, which is, I actually picked this up because it is the first like reference to the Orpheus and Eurydice tale in all of classical literature. So I think that's really cool. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's like a poem of the land. We have a book I love and a book I hate. I shouldn't say hate. I have very complicated relationship with it though. So we have the Iliad and the Odyssey. I hate Odysseus. I like the Odyssey. I hate Odysseus. I've read the Odyssey like I can't even count how many times. I've read it for class and for fun, and just I hate Odysseus. He cannot be redeemed for me. But I love the Iliad. I've only read it in its entirety once, and I very much want to reread it because I love it so much. This is, if you're looking to get into classics or classical books and stories, and you are a fan of fantasy, read the Iliad. It is so good. It's just, it's on the scale of like epic fantasy stories, and it's just, I love it so much. And like when I read it, I have such a hard time being like, oh, but do I like the Trojans or the Greeks more, because there's positives and negatives on both sides. And just like, I cry so much for so many characters, okay? It's so good. It's so good. Okay, so this is like continuing on with like classic type book. Next we have like my short ones. I don't know what else to call it. They're shorter. I keep them on this shelf right here actually, and I almost forgot to include them. So we have a copy of Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I don't think I need to say anything else. This is the Folger edition, which is nice, but I don't think I'll buy any more in this edition. We have The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This is the Barnes & Noble Classics in like the mass market paperback edition. I hate the regular Barnes & Noble Classics, like tall paperback edition. I don't like them at all, but I love the little mass market editions. They please me. I haven't read this yet. I know I'm gonna love it when I read it, because I've read Edith Wharton's The Reckoning. This is one of the little black penguins, I think they're called. I got this as a gift, or like not like a party favor, but it kind of gave off party favor vibes when I got to I studied abroad in London, and when I got to my school there, they gave everyone a copy of a different little penguin, and mine was Edith Wharton's The Reckoning. So this is 2 little short stories, Mrs. Manstey's View and The Reckoning, and I really like them both. Mrs. Manstey's View was like one of my favorite short stories I've ever read. So yes, I immediately bought Age of Innocence and just haven't read it yet, but I think this summer maybe. I'm kind of like given vibes. And this, I actually picked this up when I was abroad. I got it at Foyle's, my favorite bookstore in the world, and that is La Pâte à Ponce by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. This is the 70th anniversary folio book. Look at that. It's a little slipcase. So we have de Saint-Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is like a little sketchbook. It was a little sketchbook, and just like notes, and just like, isn't that really cool? Isn't that cool? Okay. And then we have La Pâte à Ponce, Le Petit Ponce. My French, I can read it. I can't always say it correctly, so forgive me. But it's the original in French and everything, and just I love this edition of the book. This is the only edition I own anymore. I used to have another one. I actually annotated it and wrote a really great essay about it for a class, a feminism class actually, and I talked about the flowers. So okay, here's another edition of The Great Gatsby. This is the serious edition. As far as I can tell, they've only published 2 books like this, Great Gatsby and The Art of War, and I have no interest in The Art of War, but they are doing a Pride and Prejudice version like this, so I will be buying that. That doesn't come out till 2022. I just think this is cute. I love these like pocket hardcovers, and also like shiny edges, so I couldn't not. I don't think I'll ever read this edition. I just adore the aesthetic. And then the last 2 like short books are 2 Sherlock Holmes books. This is Study in Scarlet and Sign of the Four. I love Sherlock Holmes. I used to have copies of his complete works, and I have no idea where they went. As if Sherlock Holmes wrote them. I meant Arthur Conan Doyle's complete works. No idea where they went. These are, I don't even remember, like Little Red Classics, I think these editions are called. I have to buy them used because they're out of print, but I just love them. These are designed by Coralie Bickford Smith, whom I also love. And again, I love the size of them. I love the cover. Yeah, I don't mind getting them used. It's fine. I just think they're really cute. Okay, and then we have some poetry. I, until recently, forgot I had this little collection, but this is just a collection of classic poetry. I got this when I graduated middle school from a friend of my mom's, and it has selected poems from W.B. Yeats, Oscar Wilde, Alfred, Lord Tennyson, William Shakespeare, Christina Rossetti, Edgar Allan Poe, John Donne, Emily Dickinson, Robert Burns, and William Blake. And I hope to actually read these because they have been sitting in the basement gathering dust because I forgot about them. And I'm trying to read poetry. Okay, I think this is my last Shakespeare, and this is an edition that I adore. This is A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is part of the William Shakespeare Penguin collection that you can only get in Stratford-upon-Avon, and it's so pretty. It's so pretty. Okay, I love it so very much. I love it so very much. I should try to get the rest of the matching editions. They don't do all his plays like this, but they had quite a few. And I'd never seen A Midsummer Night's Dream. I've still never seen it, but I have now read it, and I think this is definitely top like 5 Shakespeare plays. I really enjoy it, especially for not having like seen it. I have a hard time sometimes connecting with Shakespeare unless I've seen a performance, whether it's a movie or a stage production, but this one I had no trouble connecting with and I really loved it. Now we have my Penguin English Library editions, which we all know are the most aesthetically pleasing editions out there for a lot of books. I love them. I do want to collect. I don't want to collect all of them because there are a lot I just don't have any interest in, but most of them I am interested in, and I want to collect all the ones I do have interest in. First of all, we have a book that I have a somewhat complicated relationship with because I've started it so many times and then gotten distracted by shiny objects because I'm like, oh, it's a big book, I have time, and then I just put it down and don't pick it up again. But every time I've started it, I've been like, this is amazing. This book's amazing. So I really have no reason for not having finished it except that I am easily distracted. And that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I love War and Peace. I love what I've read of War and Peace, which is like about half of it. And this one I actually got at Shakespeare & Company in Paris. I've been there a couple times. It's also a bookstore I really like, but I don't know what else I've gotten there, but I did get War and Peace there, and just, I need to finally just read the entire text at some point. Then I have a, what was I going to call it? This is Grim Tales for Young and Old by Philip Pullman. This is one of the more recent releases. I have put this on my TBR 2 seasons in a row, and I still haven't gotten to it. But it's a collection of original / retold fairy tales, I believe. Oh, this is my first Penguin English Library book. This is my first. This is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It's A Christmas Carol and Other Christmas Writings, all by Charles Dickens. I am a huge Dickens fan. I adore him. I don't own any copies of his books besides this one at this point because I had to get rid of a lot of them. But I do love him. I've read, I want to say, maybe like 2/5 of his library. Maybe a little more than that. But yeah, this is my first and my favorite. Then, another, I love The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. I went to Canterbury, which is one of my favorite cities that I've ever been to, and when I was there, of course, I had to pick up a copy of The Canterbury Tales. I mean, like, how could I not? There's nothing to, like, designate that's where I got it from except my memory, but just loved. Then recently we've been getting a lot at work of the Penguin English Library editions, and I haven't been able to stop myself. So I have a Jane Eyre, a book that the first time I read it I absolutely abhorred, but I completely blame my teacher. She was not a great teacher. She made us read half the text on her own and refused to teach it. It was over spring break. She's like, if you don't read it, you are getting detention. And she didn't explain anything. She didn't give us like anything to like help us understand. She was just like, read it. And then we like tried to understand the second half, but like without the context of the first half being clear, it's very difficult. So I'd like to reread that because I think I would like it. And then another copy of Pride and Prejudice because I love Pride and Prejudice, and this is just such a pretty edition. And yes, I do need to get every Jane Eyre. What did I just say? I need to get every Jane Austen book in this edition, okay? I just need to. It's so pretty, okay? And then the only paperback English Library edition that I have is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and this is how I read Little Women. I have such mixed feelings about the paperbacks. They're fine. I think that the covers are too, I don't know, thin or something. They get like easily dented, and I hate the orange on the spines, so. But I do like them otherwise, and I like the designs of the cover. I like the orange on the covers. I just don't like how the spines look like that. Okay, now we're gonna do modern classics. Some of these are actually part of like modern classic series, and some of them are like authors that honestly, in my head when I think about them, I kind of just file them amidst modern classic authors. Before you ask about some of these, yeah, that's why they're here. When I think about them, I don't consider them like literature. You know, if I were like to shelve them, I'd be like, oh, that's a modern classic. Not that there's much a difference between that, it's just how it files away in my head. So, first off, we have The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is the UK edition. There's 4 books in this like series, companion books. I don't know how it works. I haven't read it yet. Seems like a crime. I've heard this is one of those books you should read if you like books. So yes, I will get to it. This feels like it's going to be a wintry read though, if I'm being honest. Then we have the first George Smiley novel by John le Carré, and that's The Call for the Dead. I got this because I went on a walking tour of London where they talked about spies, and while they did talk a lot about actual spycraft, they also talked a lot about fictional spies, and George Smiley sounded really interesting to me, and yeah, I hope to read this. I don't know when. I've had it for a while now. I've had it for years. Haven't picked it up. Then we have 4 olive editions, which are published by Harper. They're the Harper Perennial Olive editions. So some of these, or one of these is from 2019 set, or 2018 set, however they do it, and one of them is from 2020, so that's with these guys. I love these spines. I love these spines. I wasn't 100% sure if I should count them in classics, but I feel like because they're getting these special editions, they kind of count. So we have 2 actually Anthony Horowitz books. We have Magpie Murders and Moriarty. I haven't read either of these, but crime fiction is something I'm really interested in reading this year. I really want to. Also, I recommended Horowitz to my father, and he just finished reading several of his books. I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, okay, good. I should read those. And then we have The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. I haven't read this one either. But again, it's a book that I've known about and have wanted to read for a while. I think I'm going to fall in love with this one when I read it. And then one I have read, The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. I read this years ago in high school, and it is one of my favorite books that I've ever read, and I just didn't own a physical copy, and I jumped at the opportunity to buy one, especially such a pretty edition. This is a new acquisition for me. I actually own several copies of this book, but I had to buy it in this edition. This is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is part of the Popular Penguins series published in Australia. How cute. How cute is it? Secret History is one of my favorite books, and honestly when this arrived I was like, it's time to reread it. It's time to reread it. So that's probably going to be happening soon. Then we have Haruki Murakami. This is the only Murakami book I own, and that is Colorless Suzuki Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage. I've read a lot of his short stories. I haven't read obviously his most recent collection, but I've read I think all his other short story collections, and I love Murakami. I love his writing. It's so good. And I haven't actually read a novel, but that's the only one I have. Then we have my Italo Calvino collection. I recently read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. This is from the Penguin Vintage collection. I think this is very pretty. You can see how much I tabbed it. Can you see? I tabbed it a lot. I loved this book. This is like new favorite. Italo Calvino, new favorite author. Not gonna lie, absolutely just like head over heels for this book. And I picked up, these are the US editions of Italo Calvino's work. They're published by Mariner Books. So I got another copy of On a Winter's Night a Traveler, and I love this cover. Like, I love this cover. I think I like this more, but this is more accurate to the actual story. If you've read it, you know, you know. And then I also picked up Invisible Cities, which I think might be his first novel, but I could be dead wrong about that. So do not hold me to it. Then we have Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. This book is part of the Modern Classics Penguin series, and I've seen the film, and the film just makes my heart hurt, but I really want to read this book. And I talk a little bit more about why I want to read this book in my 5-star prediction video, so I'll tag that up above and down below if you actually want to know more thoughts, because I do go into it quite a bit about why I want to read this book. But it's gonna happen soon. I know it. And then we've got 2 of the Bloomsbury Modern Classic editions. I don't think these are in print anymore, which is a shame because I would have bought a lot more of them had I known. I had less of an opportunity to get them, but I have a copy of The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which is amazing. So if you haven't read this, go read it. It is also a retelling of the Iliad, which you know I love. Ugh. And then I also have a copy of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. Another one of my favorite books. It is due time for me to reread this. It is just so hefty. It's gonna take a little bit for me to like work myself up to being ready to read that again. But I love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Seriously, one of my favorite novels of all time. Alright, and last but not least, we have my science fiction and fantasy classic. Starting off with The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is part of the Penguin Galaxy series. I don't know if these are still in print. This is the only book in that series I have, even though there are quite a few on there that I would like. So there's also like Stranger in a Strange Land, Dune, 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Left Hand of Darkness, and Neuromancer. I need to get on getting those and completing this collection. I have read like 50 pages of this book, and it wasn't for me when I started reading it, but someone recently has convinced me to give it another shot, so I will. I'm gonna give it another shot at some point. It is basically the definitive King Arthur retelling. I debated whether to count this as a classic, but I think it counts, and that's The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Bagel. Say no more, right? This book is also in my 5-star prediction video, so check that out for more and more thoughts. But Lud in the Mist by Hope Merlis. I cannot wait to get to this one. It's gonna be soon, okay? It's gonna be soon. It's gonna be a summer book. I just know. And I just know I'm gonna love it. I just know. It's also, look at this cover. This is published by Gollancz. It is part of the what series? The Ultimate Fantasies sequence. I think these are out of print for the most part, but I really like them, so I would like to try to collect them all in these editions because I think they're very nice. And then we have 2 in the Fantasy Masterwork series, also published by Gollancz. We have Thomas the Rhymer by Alan Kushner and Grendel by John Gardner. These were both new acquisitions for me, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and read them yet. I've read parts of Grendel for a class in the past, but I've never actually read the entire text, and Thomas the Rhymer is just something I've wanted to read for a very long time. Then we have part of the Sci-Fi Masterworks, which, even though I think this book a lot of people qualify it as like a fantasy, it sort of straddles that line. That is The Book of the New Sun Volume 1 by Gene Wolfe. This has the first 2. The Shadow of the Torture and the Claw of the Conciliator. Conciliator? I really like this cover. The edges are starting to peel. I really like this cover. Then we have, I adore these editions. I adore these editions. I need all of them, even if I'm not interested in reading all of them. These are part of Penguin Class's science fiction series. They've got like the shortness, and they've also got these like really pretty covers. I love these. I love these. So we have 1 Billion Years to the End of the World by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. Dimension of Miracles by Robert Sheckley. And Trafalgar by Angelika Gardischer. Yes, I haven't read any of these. I need to get on that, right? I'm awful. So bad. I need to get to them. Oh, next we have just iconic series, and that is Hitchhiker's Guide to the End. What was I gonna call it? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I love these so much. These are the I don't even know what edition they are, but I just adore them. Yeah, I adore them. I adore them so much. So this is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. These are obviously by Douglas Adams. The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Life, the Universe, and Everything. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. And Mostly Harmless. I love these covers so much. They're so cool. Then we have Foundation by Isaac Asimov. This is the only Asimov book I have, and I haven't read it. I should get on that. Then we have Neuromancer by William Gibson. Again, haven't read it. And then finally, last but not least, except maybe a little bit because I didn't love this book, we have 2 copies of Dune. We've got this one, which is the 50th anniversary edition, published by Hodder. Yeah. And then the back ripping a little bit. Hodder. And then we have Dune in the American Mass Market paperback edition with some dust hanging off of it. Don't know where that came from. This is the edition I read. This is the edition I owned first, but this is the edition I read. I might reread it in anticipation of the movie. It was just okay. I feel like it was overhyped for what it was. That's just my opinion though. Look at how flappy it is. Okay. But yes, that's my classics collection. I did not count how many books there are. If I feel like I want to, I will count and put the number up now, but there is a chance where I'm not going to count because I don't like counting my books. It gives me anxiety because then I feel like I have too many. But yes, that's my collection. I definitely want to do a check-in like this every year or so, see how my collection has grown, changed, if I've actually read more of them, which is the goal. Low-key, it's sort of like a back of my mind goal. I'm always trying to read like a classic in between another type of book that doesn't stay strictly to how I actually end up reading, but I think it is like a good goal to have in the back of my mind. But yeah. Do you read classics? Do you like classics? Do you just hoard classics because they're so pretty? There's no shame in that, if that's the case. Alright, that was me for a while. But I'm so glad I've opened up my world and my reading to classic books, because why was I sleeping on this? Why was I sleeping on these? So many of these titles are amazing. I'm just a fool, honestly. So okay, I'm going to leave. I will see you guys next time. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope that you are safe and you are healthy. Bye.